And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. Please remember to follow Joe and I wherever you find us on Facebook and YouTube, across social media. Like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. You all know by now, or I'll remind you, that we are on the Veritas Catholic Network up in Fairfield County, Connecticut. We have a Sunday afternoon interview show there. So we encourage you all to download the Veritas Catholic Network mobile app, and then you can get access to all of the station's content and all of the interviews that we have on there. And finally, if you want to support us with a few bucks, you could find us at patreon.com/Frontline with Joe and Joe if you want to help us financially. And as always, please keep us in your prayers and support us that way. So anyway, we have a great show for you. And bottom line is this. I think the left is, I don't know, they call themselves the smartest people in the room. Remember, they're the smartest people in the room, okay? Are they so dumb that they don't realize that they're helping? If Donald Trump does choose to run again, they're helping him get reelected. Now, we're going to break down for you, all right, the pathology of liberalism, and how, if you look at it, Joe Rossinello, and all you guys out there on the Crusade channel and anywhere you find us, you're gonna agree with us that there is a pathology behind them, and they don't even realize, because they're so blind, that they're going to get the outcome, which is the opposite of what they want. They're going to get Trump, or a Trump-like person that's going to be president of the United States in 2024. That's going to be a fun and interesting conversation. The Democrats are moving forward on court packing. You got Hank Johnson, the congressman from Georgia, and we're going to talk about him. He's a real doozy, that guy, all right, and a couple of others. They're moving forward with court packing, and we all know that that's dangerous. So Joe and I are going to break that down. I think David Limbaugh, Rush Limbaugh's cousin, has been watching the Frontline with Joe and Joe. He should be. He probably is, because he's got a couple things to say about Republicans, okay, that Joe and I talk about all the time. We got to be careful of those crazy Republicans. So we're going to break that down. Hopefully we get to it all. Elise Stefanik is now the conference chair for the GOP. My attitude, or what I have to say about that is bye-bye Liz Cheney, okay? We have a couple of things we want to talk about. Christianity is obviously under assault. Sam Brownback, who's a convert basically to the faith. Sam Brownback from Kansas is a convert. He says this is the most persecuted era for Christianity in all of history. That's a pretty bold statement, but I think he backs it up. John Nolte, who we love so much, you got everything going on with this gas crisis. And what are these people doing in the Biden regime? They're rubbing it in our face, Joe Rossinello. Rubbing it in our face. So that's just a glimpse of what we're going to be talking about at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Having said that, let's get into the pathology of the left.
And let's start with the prayer. We always start with the prayer in the name of the Father,
Son, Holy Spirit. Amen.
Remember,
our most gracious Virgin Mary, never was it known that anyone who sought your help, who sought your intercession, was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, we fly into you, O Virgin of Virgins, our Mother. To you we come, before you we stand, sinful and sorrowful.
O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not our petitions, but in your clemency hear and answer us. Amen.
Saint Dominic,
pray for us.
In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. So let's rock and roll. Joe Rossinello.
Joe said, we're going to get into the pathology of liberalism to start to show off. This is from Joan Sawarski. She's from the Canadian Free Press. I think this is a great article, and she breaks it down. It's kind of humorous, but in all honesty, there's a lot of truth to it. What's our first symptom we're going to talk about? The glum factor of liberals.
What impressed me, Joe Rossinello, sorry to cut you off, more than anything when I read this article, I was like, Joe and I got to talk about this. That's the first thing that comes to mind for Joe and Joe, is these people are so damn unhappy. Well, go ahead, Joe.
Obviously, liberals are uniformly glum. This is what Joan says, and both in their grim demeanors and their bleak outlooks. Why is that? This is, my wife and I talk about this all the time. I mean, it's no surprise. Me and Joe are Catholic, and have you ever met a daily communicant that votes for the Democrats? A daily communicant. That doesn't mean that we're better or anything. No. A lot of times, liberals, and we're not talking necessarily about Democrats, because there are people who vote for Democrats who are not like loony leftists.
Right. They're not insane.
They don't believe in God. They're secular humanists. That's a fact. That's just factual. And why I say that is, if you don't believe in God, you'll never be happy. I'm just telling you.
They'll tell you that they're happy. They're as happy as the day is long. But here's the thing.
Never be happy.
This is why Joan hits the nail on the head, because under it all, no matter how happy they try to present themselves, okay, we're happy, we're rich, we're smart, we got PhDs hanging all over our offices in our homes, all right, and all this stuff. At the end of the day, when you listen to them, Joe Resinello, these are miserable people. They are so glum. And you know the best example that we could give of that? I think I mentioned it before on the Crusade channel and also on social media, okay? The perfect example is Air America. And I will hammer that home because they raised $100 million from rich liberals to start this radio show that was going to compete against AM talk radio, which grew organically. Conservative AM talk radio failed miserably. Why? Because these people are so unhappy. And the audience knew it. Joe Resinello, the audience agreed with them on everything, and the audience turned them off because they're unhappy, and people don't want to hear unhappy people.
Well, it comes down to like what St. Augustine said. Whether you're religious or not, Augustine is a brilliant mind. He has written, he's studied in both religious circles as well as secular circles. And one of the famous quotes that Augustine, who was, by the way, a non-believer and lived a very worldly life, is his book called Confessions, where he documents his life, very similar to Thomas Merton, who wrote a book, Seven Story
Mountain.
It's very similar. He was an intellectual. He went to Columbia, and then he basically unraveled all of his like vices, and then he becomes a Trappist monk. Well, Augustine does something similar in Confessions. I'm just giving you a little background, but what he basically says is this: the heart does not rest until it rests in thee. Augustine tried everything, and he was brilliant. Even brilliant people today who read Augustine will say he was brilliant. Like, you don't have to be religious. You read one of his books, you're like, this dude is super smart. And he said, the heart does not rest until it rests in thee. That's one of the takeaways from that book. And that's kind of what like, I guess, like stems into this glum factor. We're made for God. We were made for God. We came from God. We're put on this earth, and we're made to go back to him. But when we reject him, there's no joy in you. It's a fact. Deep joy. We're not talking about ha-ha. We're talking about joy. When I go to sleep, I sleep like a baby. That is what I'm talking about. It's peace, it's joy. They don't have it. It's not because of their political belief. It's because of the absence of God, and it's a fact. They're secular humanists.
I agree with you in everything you said, except one thing. I think it does tie in, to a degree, into their political belief. Why do I say that, Joe Resinello? I say that because in order for them to convince people to adopt their policy prescriptions for things, okay, they have to convince you that things are just terrible. But then they convince themselves in the process that things are just so bad, and then that becomes what Joan Swirsky is saying, the glum factor. How can I be happy? Because things are just so terrible. America is just so greedy. America is just so racist. We're all just, I mean, these are same people that, that basically they buy into critical race theory. In other words, they think that they're hateful people because of the color of their skin or something along those lines, because they have to tell you that things are so terrible. They've also convinced themselves that things are so terrible. Ergo, they're glum and they're miserable, as you would say in Italian. Remember when we used to hang out on the street? What about that guy? Oh, don't go near that guy. He's miserable. You don't want to go to that guy. You don't want to go into that guy's store. He's a miserable. All right. These people are miserable. Look at Joe and I. We rail against everything, but you know what we are? Happy.
But also,
we're happy people.
Keep this in mind. Who is the dude? Is it Omar Sharif? He was in the movie with what's his face? Peter O'Toole. He's like
Lawrence of Arabia. Yeah, Omar Sharif. Yeah,
Omar Sharif.
He played Dr. Zhivago.
Correct. He's a famous actor. Well, he plays Peter. There's a movie about St. Peter, and it's two-part movie. It's pretty good, actually. He does a pretty good job. There's a scene in it that I thought was very poignant. It made me think of it when Joe was saying this, like back and forth about people being miserable. He has a back and forth with this Roman who basically he's preaching to poor people. And the Roman's like, look at these people, look at you, look at this, look at this. And he just cuts him off and he just says, tell yourself that. And he turns around and just continues on because they're trying to convince themselves of something. That's why I bring this up. Listen, you can't convince yourself that you're full if you're hungry, right? Like if you don't eat for 2 days, nothing, you just drink water, you didn't eat. If I said to you, you're not hungry, you'll look me in the face. You'll be like, what are you talking about?
I'm famished.
I'm starving. I haven't eaten in 2 days. Well, it's the same thing with what Omar Sharif says to this guy when he's basically berating him. Tell yourself that. Rationalize that. Like, without God, there is no peace because we're made for God, whether you like it or not. You see, that's the thing. And this is what I used to say to people when I used to teach this in certain circles. You don't have to believe in gravity to know it exists. You could say, I don't believe in gravity. All right, you don't believe it. Jump off the roof.
See what happens.
When you hit the ground,
you'll believe in it.
And if you don't do it again. And that's what Omar Sharif was saying to the student. Tell yourself that. Don't tell me. I know what I'm talking about.
Does it strike you too? Because look, these are people, again, most of the time, the elites, the liberal elites, they have a lot of money. They have a lot of power. They have a lot of influence, whether it's in academia, whether it's in the media, whether it's in government. Okay. They also consider, like Joe said, they consider themselves, somebody mentioned in the chat room, they consider themselves to be gods. And, you know, as gods, they wonder sometimes, well, why aren't you listening to me? Talking about people like us, talking about people out there on the Crusade channel, talking about the people who hear us on social media. I was like, why aren't you listening to me? Say, because we're not miserable like you. And we don't think, even though the world has some terrible things in it, we don't think the world is so miserable or a place that we can't solve our problems and still be happy in life, regardless of all the hardships and tragedies that come along. We could still be a happy, joyful people, okay? But because they themselves think they're gods, because remember, once you do, like Nietzsche said, once you do away with God, then you have to replace God. Who are you replacing God with? You. Yourself, which is no God at all. So they're miserable because no matter how much they push and push and push and push, and we're seeing that particularly now, they're pushing like they've never have before. They get mad because people don't listen. Joe Resinello. They get mad because people don't listen. I'm God. Why are you not listening to me? I'm telling you things are terrible. Why are you not listening to me? And they get even more glum and more glum and more glum. That's actually a good
point, even for us, because here's the thing. As Christians, as Catholics, we're meant to be faithful. We're not meant to be successful. What do I mean by that? I tell myself this sometimes because I make a lot of points. We do this on the show. We make points in our interview shows. And listen, a lot of times people don't listen to me. It's just the truth. Many times they don't listen to me. Mm-hmm. But why do I bring this up? That's not why I should say things, and I bring this up for you, that's not why you should speak the truth. You speak the truth to be faithful. At the end of the day, when I stand before God, I have to say I was faithful or I wasn't. Mm-hmm. Or I don't have to say, he's going to know. The success part is up to him. I have to be faithful. And what made me think of this, because I'm guilty of it, and that's why I bring it up, because I'm always aware, I try to be, what I'm saying and doing, it's pride. When you want to see success and when you want people to listen to you, and believe me, I'm guilty of this, it's my pride. I should be content with being faithful. I'm faithful to the truth. I said the truth, and that's my job. And it's not for me to convince you of anything. It's for me to say the truth, to live by the truth, and to die by the truth. Everything else is up to God. Mm-hmm. And if I did that, I should be perfectly at peace.
Amen, brother. So what are some of their other pathologies, Joe Resinello?
The dependency factor and the infantile factor. Liberals are emotional children, no matter their educational pedigree, fancy credentials, lofty titles, prestigious positions, or economic well-being. Liberals, like children, They live in, they live in a world of utopian dreams, clinging to an imagined reality and believing that if everyone would be just nice to each other, all the noisy death threats, pesky suicide bombs would just go away, and all the grumpy grown-ups in the Republican and especially conservative circles would see the light. Now, that is true. And here's another thing. There is no utopia. This side of heaven never, ever, never will be, ever. And there has to be, and this is I think the problem with the left, especially the hard left, and why they have an issue with basically, to be honest with you, if you ask me, the common everyday man on Main Street, which is our audience, but it's also even outside of that audience. Even Democrats aren't agreeing with them. You'll notice, what's his face drew a very distinct line in the sand this week. Biden met with what's his face from West Virginia.
Oh, Joe Manchin.
He left the meeting and he basically said it was. He was like, I say this definitively: there will be no federal elections and something else.
Right, probably court packing.
But he's not on board, and he's a Democrat. But what I'm basically saying is this: the thing that the left has an issue with is authority. They don't want any rules. And here's the deal, guys. Society doesn't exist without it. You cannot have a society. Take the Republican Democratic issue out of it.
Right.
A society. There has to be boundaries.
Yes.
Just like when you grow up in a house, you can't go to the bathroom in the middle of the kitchen. Does that make sense? It makes sense to me.
Right.
It's a rule, right? They don't like rules.
Well, real quick, accept their own rules.
That's true.
It's
you have to live by it.
They just what they don't really like is God's rules, also known as the 10 Commandments or the natural law. Okay, but they have plenty of rules. But here's the other thing too about this anti-authoritarianism, or we just don't like to follow rules. Okay, first of all, that's nonsense. Second of all, you don't have. I like the analogy I heard one time. I think it might have even been Bishop Robert Barron. I thought he made a very good analogy. Okay. And I'm going to paraphrase and turn it into the Joe Pasillo version of the story, okay? Take a bunch of guys. Take the 1998 New York Yankees, Jeter and all those studs on that team, okay? And you put them on a field, a grass. There's an open field with a bunch of bats and balls and gloves and uniforms, okay? Say, hey, guys, go knock yourself out. You say, well, what do you want to say? Go play. Go play baseball. All right. What are they going to do? They're going to start throwing the ball around a little bit. It's going to be all chaotic. And if you're watching that, you're going to say, well, that's nothing to watch, really. What makes the game worth watching? As soon as you put down a foul line, and then you put down the other foul line, and then you put a fence around the outfield, okay? And then you put a mound, and then you put home plate. What do all those things represent, Joe Ressinos? Boundaries, limits. But all those players, once those limits are in place, and those limits are needed in order for the game to exist. That's the important point. For the game to exist, then every one of those talented players can then blossom and flourish within the context of the rules and play the game excellently. But without those limits, without those boundaries, you know what you don't have? You don't have a game.
You don't have baseball.
You don't have baseball. You don't have something that's beautiful and good, okay? You have nothing but chaos. Life has rules. And the infantile, let's call them nitwits that Joe's talking about in their infantilism, okay? They say they don't like rules. Why do I have to follow rules? Like little children, because that's part of their pathology. And again, going back to the title of the show, which is they are unwittingly or wittingly, I don't know. I don't even know if they even get it, Joe Ressinello. They're helping Trump or someone like Trump come in 2024 in a very, very big way, because normal people reject this nonsense because they see it for the pathology that it is, Joe Ressinello.
Also, getting back to the gravity analogy, there are consequences to not accepting certain realities, whether you like it or not.
I want you to hold on to that thought about consequences, because we do have to take a quick break. You're at the front line with Joe and Joe, way in the breach on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. Please be sure to follow Joe and I on social media on Facebook and YouTube. Stick around. We're going to talk about consequences on the other side of the break. Welcome back to the Frontline with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello, and we are talking about the pathology of liberalism because it is a pathology. Now, Joe Resinello mentioned something about, we were talking about infantilism or the infantile factor when it comes to breaking down their pathology, and Joe is about to get into consequences. That's a big word, Joe.
Because here's the thing. We all have choices in life, and life is about choices. It is. I'm going to be truthful with you. But here's the thing, with choices come consequences. You should learn that in your house, in a healthy home with parents, they teach you that, but if you don't, you'll learn it in the world. And a lot of times it's going to hurt.
Yeah, I was going to say, you don't. If you have a choice, you don't want to learn it in the world, you're better off absorbing it at home.
And here's the deal. The ideas of the radical left, the consequences, it's basically their ideas are going to collapse under their own weight. Patrick Deneen, who we hopefully will interview very shortly, I've been in touch with him. He's a professor of political science at Notre Dame. He has said that. He basically said, America is in decline. It is a decline because of the left. And the left is collapsing under the weight of its own ideas. And what he's basically saying there is this: the consequences of their choices, i.e. their policies, are not sustainable.
Right.
It's not sustainable. I'm going to be honest with you. I say this to Joe. I've said this to my wife. If it ever got so bad in America that they took me to jail because of my ideas, as they took me out of my home handcuffed, these would be my words: enjoy your hour, because that's all you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
However long that hour is, I can bet everything that I have that it will just be an hour. This is not sustainable. These ideas have been tried and have failed, and they will fail again. There is no doubt in my mind, not a single doubt. We don't have to. Did you ever work with somebody like like in your job years ago, when people basically like they're doing something wrong, and basically you just give them the rope to hang themselves? I've done that. You don't have to do anything. You just sit there and watch them explode, because it's self-destructive.
Mm-hmm.
Their ideas are self-destructive. It's a fact. And Patrick Deneen, like I said, no lightweight. He's one of the most revered political scientists in America. He teaches at Notre Dame University. Says this, and he's not the only one.
Right.
Their ideas are not sustainable.
But like the children that you're describing, they can't process why their ideas are not being accepted by people like us. And we say, I saw a really good there's a documentary. I'm surprised that Amazon actually airs it. Amazon actually puts on some stuff that they probably don't approve of in their liberal circles, but they'll put it on. There's a documentary out there about Thomas Sowell, okay, the renowned African-American conservative.
Academic.
All right, academic, brilliant guy, just a brilliant guy. I've been reading his stuff for years, okay? And the interviewer, I forgot the interviewer's name. You see him on Fox News around here or there. He asked Thomas Sowell about the fact that Thomas Sowell at one point was a Marxist. Okay, I never knew that. He was a Marxist. Okay, before he went over to the University of Chicago and Milton Friedman and the rest of them, he was a Marxist. And the interviewer asked him, said, "What changed your mind on Marxism?" And Sowell just looks at him and says, "The facts." That's it. The facts. He was open and honest enough, all right, as an intellectual to look into the thing he said he believed in, which was Marxism. And then he said, the facts don't support this system, if you want to call it that. Joe and I don't think it's a legitimate political and economic system. We think it's a criminal enterprise, all right? But it's been tried and failed. That's a fact. And these infants in this pathology of liberalism, these infants do not want to admit that it's been tried, it's been failed, and the facts get in the way for them when guys like us say no. And people like you out there on the Crusade channel, watching us on social media, when you say, no, all this stuff has been tried, we don't want it anymore. And what do? Exactly as infants do. They throw temper tantrums, because that's what a child does. And these people are children.
And that's actually the fourth symptom, the rage factor. According to the evangel, and this is with Joan, with how do you
Swirsky.
Swirsky of the Canadian Free Press, what she said, these are her words. She says, according to the evangelical religion of leftism,
And it is an evangelical religion. Let's get that straight.
if America were not so strong, so powerful, so rich, so successful, so inevitable, so inviolable to the rest of the world, things would be better. This is because liberals hate strength and power, wealth and success, except that is when they are the beneficiaries. It is significant to note that the richest politicians in Congress are Democrats. You see, I've always said this, it's misplaced guilt. A lot of this woke activism is misplaced guilt. You see, again, I'm going to refer back to my Catholic faith. See, if you believe in Christ, there's a place to put your guilt. It's on God. And as a Catholic, where do we put our guilt? In the confessional. I'm a sinner, far from perfect. Far, far, far from perfect. Believe me, ask my wife. I go to confession at least once a month. Usually it's twice a month. I have a place to put my guilt. It's on God. And as a Catholic, through the sacraments, I'm forgiven. This woke craziness, it's misplaced guilt. They don't know where to put their guilt, so they're putting it on society. They're putting it on this group. They're putting it on that group. They're putting it on this group. It's the wrong place to put it.
I agree with you about the guilt part. And I think you made a very important point. If you feel guilty, Mr. or Mrs. pathologically insane liberal, that's your business. But don't put your guilt on me, because I am not guilty of the things that you accuse me of. Let me give you an example. John Kerry. Mr. Kerry, if you feel guilty because you married into your millions when you married into the Heinz family, the Heinz ketchup family, then you became worth hundreds of millions of dollars. If you feel guilty about that, you deal with that guilt. But stop imposing this pseudo environmentalism, climate change nonsense on us, saying we can't drive a car, but you could fly in a private jet. So my point is, you're exactly right, Joe Rossinello, okay? It's misplaced guilt, but they don't take the guilt upon themselves. They put it on you. And that's the galling part about it. In other words, don't point your finger at me. If you think that there's a problem of racism, maybe you ought to go look in the mirror. But don't point your finger of racism at me simply because I have white skin. I'm not accepting that. So you're exactly right, by the way.
If you look at even the racism like accusation, I'll just use my family as an example. My family wasn't even in this country during the Civil War. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, yes, I'm a white male, but I have never hurt a person of color in my life, nor have my parents. And like I said, we're only here 120 years, right, the Rossinellos. Like as you know, from my grandfather to me. So my point is, like, what did I do to you? And just to label me, like where you hear companies like Coca-Cola say you have to become less white. What does that mean? But also, it's so insulting. I didn't do anything to you. I could say that's just by being me. Does it mean I did something to you?
Right.
You can't say that. It's not fair. And my family, I'll be honest with you, Italians were persecuted when they came into this country in the early 20th century. My father grandfather didn't speak the language, the Italian language, in the house because he wanted my father to speak English. The language got lost because of that. So my point is, it's not logical. It's not linear, nor is it fair or just. But again, I think it's misplaced guilt. I don't even think it's realized, actually. It's like, you also see that in certain segments of Hollywood. Like, people will say, that they're for, like, the rainforest in the Amazon. They've never been there. Now, listen, I recycle. I recycle cardboard, and I recycle bottles. I recycle plastic. I do it all. Because I'm a steward. As a Catholic, you're supposed to be a steward of the environment. It's, absolutely, I'm all for it. But people are more important. You see, people are more important. It's, again, it's innate like a need to do something higher than ourselves. All of us, it's built into the human condition. If you don't direct that where it should go, which is to God, you create another channel. So you create this channel of, I'm going to save the Amazon rainforest, but you've never been there.
Well, we covered that last week. George Weigel wrote an article talking about exactly that, this religion of environmentalism. You said it exactly right, Joe Resinello, okay? They've displaced God, but you got to create a new religion. There's always going to be a religion of some kind. So for them, one of their religions, okay, is environmentalism. And they have their prophets like Al Gore. He's one of their prophets. All right. He's got John Kerry, right? He's another prophet of the environmental religion. Actually, Al Gore might be the high priest, if you want to put it like that. Okay. They have their God. Their God is the earth. It's Gaia. See, because there's an emptiness there. Okay. And as Joe said, because all human beings, when we strive for the good, that means we're striving for something transcendent, the good, the true, and the beautiful in a transcendent sense. But these people don't believe in God, not the real God. Okay. So they have to create a God that's, let's say, in this world, and they think somehow they're going to create a utopia and we're all supposed to buy it. Again, one more time, they're children. Their children is what they are. And tying into our original point, in 2022, all right, once everything else gets straightened out, and all you out there know exactly what I mean, okay, once everything gets straightened out in places like Georgia and Arizona and Pennsylvania, Michigan, and everywhere else, okay, 2022 and 2024 are going to be really bad for the Democrats. And why? Because even sane Democrats, and there are sane ones out there, you don't see them because the press doesn't cover them, and Nancy Pelosi doesn't want you to know about them. Okay, there are sane Democrats out there. Joe and I wouldn't vote for them, but I will say they're sane. What these pathological people are doing is they're pushing all people of goodwill to voting for either Trump or the next iteration of Trump. That's what they're doing. That's, of course, what they would claim they're not doing. But when you act like a child and you could break down the pathology as Joan Swirsky did in this article, okay, people look at it. People don't have to read this article to know what's going on here. All right, we are just breaking it down because that's what we do at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. We like talking about these things, okay? They're handing it over to the other side, which is the Republicans. We just have to hope that the Republicans don't start putting rhinos up. We have to have some, real conservatives in there. But that's what they're doing, Joe Resinello. Go ahead.
Let's talk about the jealousy factor. Joan Swirsky of the Canadian Free Press says this. She says, nothing is quite as potent as the second most powerful emotion on earth, jealousy. First, of course, is fear. Obviously, we've seen that. The cancel culture, that is liberals, what they created is basically they can't win arguments. They cannot win political policy arguments, philosophy arguments in an objective, empirical way. So what do they have to do as a result of that? They have to bully, they have to boycott, they have to pressure, and they have to punish anyone who disagrees with them. It's an interesting point. I would never have pointed it to jealousy, but it's a tactic. Like it's a tactic that they're using. It could be jealousy. I mean, who am I? This is Jones,
right.
But I would say it's definitely a tactic to shut down when you use the abortion argument. A child it's a child in the third trimester. How can you say it's not a child? Look at the sonogram. You're anti-woman. Right. It's a woman's choice. I didn't say that. I said it's a child. You're changing the subject.
Right.
We could talk about how it is not anti-woman after first we talk about that it's a child. But they don't, because they don't have an argument. They simply don't.
Well, in the case of this particular point about jealousy, they know that most people don't hate rich people. I don't hate my boss. Okay. I work for a company that has a boss. All right, it's not a public company that has a boss who's probably worth somewhere in the neighborhood of about $3 billion. I don't hate my boss. I am not jealous of my boss, and I'm not envious of my boss. Okay. I look at my boss like I do all people, including myself, my family, my friends. I simply just want everybody to go to heaven. Okay. Let's try to do the best we could on earth, and then let's all go to heaven. all that that means. The left has to convince you, no, no, that man has more than you. You need to hate him. You need to be jealous of him. You need to be envious of him. And you need to give us the political power to take money from him and give it to you, which, by the way, never happens. They're not interested in taking money from him and giving it to me. They're interested in simply having the money to take the power from him. Okay. They need to sow this jealousy argument, this argument of envy. I heard it said a few times. Socialism, liberalism, communism. It's the politics of envy. Okay. And they hate the fact, again, because they're children. When I say, I don't hate my boss. My neighbor's got a bigger house. I don't begrudge him. I don't wish bad upon him. More power to him. He's got a nice house. He's got a nice car. Why should I hate him? And they say, well, because. And when you don't, then they turn on you and they say there's something wrong with you. No, it's because we don't allow them to get away with that argument, Joe Resinello.
Well, the whole idea of socialism is class warfare. Basically, a lot of it is class warfare. Mm-hmm. And you see that. They pit like Wall Street against Main Street. I mean, here's another thing which kind of brings us to the infantile factor that we were talking about. There's going to be no utopia here on Earth. You can't legislate morality to create utopia on Earth. Communism has failed. It's tried and has failed at it. Socialism, go to Europe. I've said this on the show many, many times. Travel an hour outside of any major capital in Europe and tell me if socialism is succeeding. It's not. Right. It gets poor real fast. It gets poor real fast. Socialism cements the elites in their elite position and throws the rest of society a crumb. And it basically throws them a crumb from the elite position to basically placate them. And it cements their place. And you will never climb out of your basement if you're in that 80% group and they're in their 20s.
That's right. And when you see the pictures of those European cities or cities from other parts of the world, they make the cities look so glamorous. Okay. Oh, and that's where all the rich people are and blah, blah, blah. But as Joe said, you could take some really beautiful pictures of the city of Rome and it might look like heaven on earth to you. And go 10 miles outside that, in some places in the city, but go 10 miles outside that city. And you know what you're going to find? You're going to find a lot of poor Italians. And that's the same whether you're talking about going to England or going to Germany. The cities, they look good. They make them look good. We know the cities are all, have a lot of problems. But outside of that, you got a lot of poor people. Okay. And the infants have caused that. Okay. They've caused that with these stupid policies because they won't grow up and understand that socialism, even if you wanted to look at it as a legit political and economic system, okay, does not work. It doesn't work. And that's why guys like Trump or somebody like him is going to be elected president in 2024.
Let's talk about another symptom, the victims are us factor.
This is a big one. The victims factor is a big one.
In their childlike eyes, liberals consider just about everyone and often anyone as both needy and helpless. It's an industry with them. Revile as they do the majority of Americans who value, here it is, accountability, independent problem solving, and the central rule of law and order in society instead of big government dependency. Listen, I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth. My grandfather was a factory worker. My father came from Italy. My father was a barber in a one-man barber shop, and they sacrificed and sent me to college. Everything that I have, I sacrificed for and earned. No one gave me anything. And frankly, I don't want government to help me. And here's another thing. I didn't go to Harvard and I didn't go to Yale. I didn't. So the point is, if you are a hardworking person in America, whether you have an education or not, you could make it. I have seen people do it. And no one is going to tell me otherwise. I've seen Latinos do it. I've seen African Americans do it. And I've seen white people do it.
You mentioned earlier, you've seen poor illiterate Italians do it. Okay. They didn't even understand the language. You know what they understood, though? They understood hard work,
family,
accountability. I know that Ibram Kendi, the race huckster, the Al Sharpton with a PhD, he says you're not supposed to use these words because if you use these words, you're a racist. But I'm going to use the word because it's not a racist phrase to say personal responsibility. You are responsible for your life. Government is simply supposed to set the conditions where you have a fair shot. But once you have a fair shot, equality of opportunity, okay, then the choice is yours about what you're going to do with your life. Whether you're going to go to school, not go to school, learn a trade, do whatever. Okay, start a business. And it ain't, and again, that's another thing. Adults understand that life is not easy. It's not. My sciatic hurts every single day as evidence that life is not easy, and getting up and going to work is not the easiest thing to do. However, I consider myself a grown-up. These people are infants, and they don't understand. You're not going to get away. You're not going to get through life without suffering. You're not going to get through life without some pain. You're not going to get through life without some sacrifice. You're not going to do it and still be happy. If you embrace those things as an adult, okay, and you're not a pathological liberal, okay, you'll be in a much better place. These people don't want to get that through their head. So what do? Everybody's a victim, Joe Rasinello.
Here's another thing. Arnold Schwarzenegger has an interesting video. I heard it blew the internet up in terms of Arnold when he did he gave a talk about like his life. And he said supposedly it got so many views. And one of the things, I actually listened to it. One of the things he basically communicates in it is there's no magic pill to success. Everything is hard work. Listen, I'm going to tell you this right now. Whether you're a lawyer, whether you're a mason, whether you deliver milk, whether you're a doctor, whether you're on the radio, whatever, hard work. There is not a single successful person on this planet that succeeded without hard work. And there's no excuses. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to run the world. But what I am saying is this. In this country, if you are black, if you are white, if you are a woman, if you are Hispanic, if you are Asian, if you work hard and you don't give up, you'll make it in America. And I have seen it. I went to school with people like that, who went from their father worked as a longshoreman and their son is a corporate lawyer and lives in a $3 million house. I actually know someone like that. It can be done. That's the American dream, and socialism takes that away.
Absolutely. We got to take a break, Joe Rasinello. You're at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Rasinello, way in the breach on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. Make sure that you follow Joe and I on Facebook and YouTube and wherever you find us on social media. Help us out. Help a couple brothers out. Hit a like, subscribe, share, hit the little bell, do all that fun stuff, and stick around. We're going to talk about maybe one or two more, and then we're going to move on. We got a lot more topics to get to, so we'll see you on the other side of the break. Welcome back to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Rasinello, way in the breach on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. So we don't want to waste any time. We're going to get right back into it because we have a few other stories we want to get to. So I'm going to hand it over to Joe, and we're going to put a couple of finer points on the pathology of liberalism and how it's going to help to get Trump or someone Trump-like elected in 2024.
And this is a long conversation, but it's an important one, and we're going to continue with it to the very end, because I think that Joan from the Canadian Free Press did a great job, and we just want to talk through it because I think there's so many very good points. She makes this point, the conceit factor. Liberals entertain the conceit that they are quite evolved and superior, both morally and intellectually. In their childlike minds, they are good, and the people who set limits, demand accountability, expect empirical results, fight their enemies, and also make judgments about what is good and bad and right and wrong, they're bad. You see, once again, that's a utopian dream. Life is about lines. Life is about, in some situations, not every situation is black and white, but there is a right and there is a wrong. That's the way it is. And you have to live in reality. And there are consequences to not living in reality. You know, I always call it's called the art of living. I have witnessed this in my life. In this country, I have witnessed many people who were not educated, who lived very fruitful and good lives because of the things that the left hate. They demanded accountability. They demanded results. They made judgments on what was right and what was wrong. Some of these people were very simple people, but they lived very good, healthy lives. And here's another thing. If you don't do these things, you'll destroy yourself. I don't care if you went to Harvard. I don't care if you're an investment banker. I don't care if you're a movie star. You will destroy yourself. And you see this in the lives of many of these people. How many people in Hollywood have a successful life? I'm not talking about money.
Yeah, because it goes beyond money.
I'm talking about successful, healthy marriages, healthy children,
Healthy kids.
like because healthy kids a lot of times are products of healthy marriage.
I mean, look, I mean, again, I don't know how Joe Rossino, I do not know how people measure success, and I'm not judging him, but Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith, what are they doing to their son? In other words, they let him dress like a girl walking down the street. This kid's got no identity. Every time you read about him, he's doing one weird thing or another. So you could have hundreds of millions of dollars in the bank, but look at the fruit of your life. Your son's a mess. Dwayne Wade did the same thing. Dwayne Wade, the basketball player, and his wife, Gabrielle Union, they celebrated their son coming out as a woman, a girl. What's wrong with your life? That how, like Joe says, you're not attached to reality. You are detached from reality if you celebrate your son saying that he wants to be referred to as a girl and that he feels like a girl. So you can point to that checking account all you want. You could do that all you want. You are not a success, my friend. You're not. You're a failure because your child is lost and you're doing nothing about it. And I just use those two as an example. But you mentioned Hollywood. And again, don't even talk about divorce. Don't even talk about their complete degeneracy, okay, in other areas. I mean, those are just two examples. And then they want to get up there. And again, you started this by talking about conceit, that looking down their nose at Joe and me and all you out there on the Crusade channel and listening to us on social media, okay? They look down their nose at you, but my life's not broken. I don't have a bank book like Dwayne Wade. I don't have a fraction of what Dwayne Wade has. But I'll tell you one thing I have that he doesn't have, okay? I got peace. I have joy.
You talk about a movie. I can't remember the name of it, but Morgan Freeman plays a drug counselor. And Michael Keaton played a guy who was like a businessman who was addicted to cocaine. And he comes in, once again, similar to that Peter Omar Sharif deal. I'll never forget it, actually. He's cursing at Morgan Freeman, calling him this, calling him this. And Freeman's just like, dude, you have no control of yourself, meaning your life is completely out of control. I have nothing and I'm poor, but I am completely in control of my life. You see, again, life has boundaries. Life has rules. And again, the art of living. I've seen it. It's what I call the guy that takes the garbage out every night. No, the guy that mows his lawn. The guy that helps his wife with shopping on the weekend. It's a quiet, boring life. That's the guy that's married for 50 years. That's the guy that sees his great-grandchildren. That's the guy that dies with his wife at his side. That's the man that lives a dignified life. And that is the art of living. And they don't understand it. And many Americans don't. But particularly these ideas don't espouse it. And here's the thing. It's like gravity. If you don't believe in gravity, jump off the roof. There are consequences to not having boundaries. They don't get it and they don't want to.
Right, right. So, and then there's one more symptom, of these infantile pathological liberals, okay, talk about. Now, this is probably the biggest one because it's, again, projection. We talk about on the show, there's projection all the time. You're Catholic, or you're Christian, or you're an Orthodox Jew, or you're a conservative Muslim, okay, and you're intolerant. Who's intolerant, Joe Resinello?
Oh my God. And this is the last factor, the intolerant factor of the radical left. Not only do liberals call names, spew insults, and stamp their feet at any dissent, they also line up allies in their leftist media, left-wing think tanks, and big tech to crush any dissent to their lies that they spew. They call people names. They basically, listen, Republicans aren't perfect either. But what we just witnessed in the last year was like something, I'll be honest with you, Joe, I think it's historic in terms of what this country.
It was an historically insane year. If you want to call it like that, like you have some really bad years, you have some good years. 2020 has been insane. And the people that we're talking about here at the front line with Joe and Joe, okay, these pathological liberals, they are the epitome of the insanity. And here's the thing. They try to sell you their insanity while at the same time claiming that they know more about life than you do. They know more about your own life than you do, and how you should live your life than you do. That's the thing that sticks in me about them. And then when you turn around and say, I'm sorry, I disagree with you about all that. And by the way, I can back it up. I want to argue with you. And that's where Joe's talking about intolerance. But wait a minute. Can't no, cut them off. Can't let that conservative, can't let Rand Paul say anything. Can't let Ted Cruz say anything. Don't listen to those Catholic bishops, like Paprocki and some of the others, okay? Don't listen to that. We don't want to hear it. Well, that's intolerance. I thought you were the smart people. If you're so smart, you should have no problem debating a couple of jamokes like Joe and Joe. No problem whatsoever. We should be short work for them, Joe Resinello. They should be able to wipe us up and down the floor in debate. Why are they so afraid of debate? Why are they so intolerant? Because in their hearts, they know their children who believe in untenable and indefensible ideas, and they do not want anybody to argue with them. They will crush you. And we've seen that. Joe called the last year insane. That's what it's been. This has been a year of absolute insanity. But one of the things it's been has been a year of absolute intolerance. Intolerance of anybody who disagrees with the narrative coming out of the government. Well, I don't care what it's about. I don't care what from the pandemic right through to anything you want to talk about. If you disagree with them, you will be shut down. Now, the last time I checked, they have always called themselves the tolerant people, Joe Resinello. We are tolerant. You're not. Okay. No, we just want to have a conversation. We want to have a debate. No, we can't do that. Then who's being intolerant? They are.
I have a childhood friend made a joke one time. We always laughed about it. He said, if you can't lie to yourself, who can you lie to? And it comes down to that. It comes down to being honest with yourself. Again, I'm going to give you like a perspective from a Catholic man or a Catholic, it's just a Catholic's perspective. Sit in silence. It's important. As Catholics, one of our prayers is we sit before the Blessed Sacrament. It's the prayer of sitting and listening. And people are afraid. Many people. I actually have a friend from college that said this to me. I'm afraid of silence. I swear. He said this. He's a very successful man. He's run a business for 25 years. Very successful. Lives in the Washington, D.C. area. To listen to God. To listen. And I'm going to be honest with you, in doing that, you can't lie to yourselves. Many times, I think a lot of America, particularly the radical left, it's one rationalization after the next.
Mm-hmm.
It's not reality. And we're seeing that played out in many of their policies. A boy can transition to a girl, like things like that. That's not reality. I'm sorry. It's not. And science backs me up. You know,
but that's why they don't want debate,
and
because you're going to argue from a scientific or biological point of view, not necessarily all the time as they would expect, or they criticize us and say, well, you're arguing from a religious point of view. No, I'm not. If I say a boy can't be a girl, that's a statement of biology.
absolutely,
That's a statement of science.
and you could change the outer appearance through mutilation, but inside you are who you are.
That's right.
The DNA is set when basically procreation takes place. Once again, a scientific and biological fact. So again, it's rash living. And here's the thing: those, forget about being religious for a minute. To be a successful adult and have a successful life, and I'm not even talking about having money, you have to see things as they are. My father, God rest his soul, one of the things he always used to say to me is, Joe, straight ahead. You have to look life in the face. There are no shortcuts.
Right.
There are no shortcuts. And here's the deal. You take shortcuts, it makes the road back on the road longer.
Mm-hmm.
The shortest road is from A to B. You have to look life in the face, and the radical left doesn't.
That's right. And that's why theirs is a pathology. And that's why they are insane. And that's why they're children. The final point I would just say, bottom line, this is from Joan Swirsky, and then we're going to move on at the front line with Joe and Joe. Bottom line, the entire world is now witnessing a regime of fixated liberal, leftist, progressive children trying to run the most powerful country on earth, when what they really need is psychotropic medication. Amen, sister. Behavioral therapy, and a Congress with some backbone. Amen to Joan Swirsky. And thank you, Joan, for the article, because you gave Joe and I a great conversation here at the front line with Joe and Joe on the Crusade channel and in the breach, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. And please be sure to follow Joe and I on Facebook, YouTube, and all social media. If you like us, drop a couple bucks in Frontline or patreon.com/Frontline with Joe and Joe. We really appreciate that. So having said that, that was a great conversation. I think it's an important one. That is attacking them with the truth. We're not calling them pathological because we want to detract from them or lie about them. We're breaking down what they do and what they say and saying yours is a pathology and you need to address it. So having said that, I'm handing it over to Joe Resinello.
This is also a great story. John Nolte, who's one of our favorites, we always follow him. He says this: the elitist Biden administration rubs the gas crisis in working class faces. That's the name of the article. Check it out. This is what Nolte had to say. Excuse me. He said, if you drive an electric car, this would not be affecting you clearly. Okay. That's our energy secretary, Madam Lunatic Jennifer Granholm. So this is what Nolte, he goes on, she's basically condemning people who don't drive an electric car. This is what Nolte says. He puts it so well. He says, so this is our fault. This is the people's fault for buying vehicles that might not be electric, but are still EPA and government approved. This is our fault for buying the vehicles you told us it was okay to buy. You see, this is the whole problem with our elite left-wing administration. I'm talking about the government, the media, academia, Hollywood, big tech. They hate us.
No, this is a key part. Go ahead, Joe.
They truly hate us. They hate us because we don't agree with them, because we make our own choices about how to live our own lives, because we don't do everything they tell us to do. They hate us so much that when something like this happens, i.e. the gas crisis that's going on in the Southeast, when we're sitting in gas lines or stressing about running out of gas 100 miles from our home, they enjoy it.
They enjoy watching you in that gas line.
In their sick minds, we deserve to be punished, to be unemployed, to lose precious hours off our pay, to run out of gas in the middle of nowhere, to be gouged by price increases caused by our own incompetence.
By their own incompetence.
But in terms of, in their mind, because we don't drive an electric car, that's why we're incompetent.
Right. And why ultimately are you being punished? I was talking to somebody about this over the weekend, okay? Is that you're being punished because you had the audacity to throw a wrench into their 16-year plan, which started in 2008 and was supposed to end in 2024, starting with Barack Obama for 8 years and then Hillary for 8 years. And what happened along the way was common sense. Common sense. People saying, as we alluded to in the last segment, okay, we don't want your policy prescriptions. We don't believe in man-made climate change. We don't, okay? We don't believe that we're at fault for all the problems in the world. We are not racist. So I don't have to say, I don't believe I'm racist. I look you right in the face and I say, we are not racist, okay? And we don't want what you're proposing. And why do I say that? Because in 2016, people always forget, before Donald Trump got elected, Brexit happened first. That was not supposed to happen, but it did. Then Trump got elected. Then all of a sudden in Eastern Europe, in Bolsonaro in Brazil, what's the other president's name from Hungary? Is it Viktor Orban? All right, in Hungary. You have a nationalist movement. Now, they'll call it white nationalist. It's got nothing to do with skin color or race. It has to do with, I don't want the UN ruling my life. I don't want an international government ruling my life. If anything, I vote for people in the United States. It's American law that governs me, not international law. I don't want your international organizations. Okay. So at the end of the day, these elites, what you're being punished for and why they enjoy it is because, and they hate you because you had the audacity to say, you know what, Hillary, I don't like you. But that Trump seems to be talking some things that I happen to agree with.
And you can't even say that.
All right. And no, well, if you listen, YouTube won't get around to it now, or Facebook. They won't go so far as to take us down for saying I voted for Donald Trump, but that's coming soon. Don't worry, that'll be coming soon. All right. But for now, you say you voted for Donald Trump. That's why they hate you. How dare you? How dare you not vote for Hillary Clinton? She's so smart. She's so brilliant. She's meant to be president of the United States. How could you vote for him? Because I agree with him. How's that? I agree with him on things, and I don't agree with Hillary Clinton on anything. I can't think of one thing I agree with that woman on, and that's why they hate you, and that's why they want to see you sitting in that gas line, Joe Resinello, and squirming about gas prices going through the roof. And what's this idiot's response? You know, this wouldn't affect you if you were driving an electric car. Well, you give me the 45 G's to afford a Tesla.
Did you see the YouTube clip of this woman? How smug she was. You know how much suffering is going on because of this? Right, wrong, or indifferent, hack, no hack, whatever. I'm just talking about straight up and down suffering. I heard that gas in Virginia this weekend was $7 a gallon.
That's ridiculous.
And you can't even get it in North Carolina. That's what I heard. And then you hear this smugness. Are you out of your mind?
Mm-hmm.
Are you out of your mind? How about people can't get to work to pay their bills? I can remember a while back during the recession when there was gas issues here,
mm-hmm.
and the trains got shut down in New Jersey. And you had to wait, get up and wait, get on the line at 4 o'clock in the morning. People, they had to have cops at the gas stations in New Jersey because people were frigging killing each other.
Let's leave it there for a second. We're going to take a break. You're at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello. And as always, we just step right into the breach, and we love it because that's where we want to be, on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. Follow Joe and I on Facebook and YouTube. Like, subscribe, share, do all that fun stuff. Stick around. We got a lot more to talk about. Welcome back to the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello, Way in the Breach on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. So along these lines, and this is why we love John Nolte. Now, John, I will say, can be a little bit profane. Okay. He dropped some F-bombs, and we're not going to repeat them. He actually did in the article. He wrote in there that we won't repeat it, to Jennifer Granholm, hey, lady, blank. and in my heart, it's kind of like I feel the same way because the anger that builds up, because of what Joe said, what Joe Resinello said about, think about this person telling you, don't worry about gas. You wouldn't have to worry about gas prices if you were driving an electric car. But I like the way Nolte puts it. He says, honestly, how practical is an electric car? Now he's talking about himself. For guys like myself who have to haul their own trash to a landfill. The left's answer to that will be, you need to live in cities with us. That's what they're saying. And Nolte says, oh, yeah, I want to move to your cities where all the pollution, gun violence, hate crimes, riots, racism, and COVID and looting is. That's where I want to be. No empathy, no taking responsibility. Just screw you, redneck. That'll teach you. Now, here's the key, and this is why I read this. They don't even pretend to care.
And he ends it with this: no empathy, no taking responsibility, just ha ha, redneck. That'll teach you. They don't care. Love it.
Right.
It's so true.
Right.
It's so on point.
And they hate us because we know they're full of crap. They know that we know they're full of crap. That's why they get big tech and the regime media and academia all on board to shut us down, because they know we know that not only are they full of crap, their arguments are so stupid that a 5-year-old could blow up their stupid arguments. That's why they have to shut you down. So you're at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello, and that's why I love John Nolte. I recommend anybody, not now, after the show, look him up. He's got some great articles out there. So where are we heading next, Joe Resinello?
Chris Field of The Blaze. He reports on this one. Governor Cuomo declares New York is not ready to follow the science and implement the new CDC mask guidelines. This one's rich. The CDC formally stated to allow fully vaccinated Americans to return to a maskless state. Let's go to the quote. Anyone, this is what they said, this is the CDC, anyone who is fully vaccinated can participate in indoor or outdoor activities, large or small, without wearing a mask or physical distancing. CDC Director Dr. Rachel Walensky said,
Rochelle Walensky.
My bad. No. My Jerseyese. I pronounce things like my father, which is jackass backwards.
We did an interview with an admiral the other day. I kept calling him admirable. I couldn't. It was like one of those things where I was having a brain freeze and I couldn't get out the word admirable. See, I did it again. Anyway, let's move on.
This is what Miss Walensky had to say. She said, if you are fully vaccinated, you can start doing the things that you had stopped doing because of the pandemic. You have all longed for this moment when you can get back to some sense of normalcy.
Now, let me cut you off for 1 second. I'm sorry, Joe Resinello, but here's the thing. We're not coming down in this. The reason why we're breaking this down, okay, is because of the ridiculousness of it, okay? Because, bottom line is, this is now, see, we're really doing this for disgraziad Andrew Cuomo, okay? Because whether or not you agree, Joe and I we're not dying on that hill, okay? We're just not, okay? But the bottom line is, I thought this was about the science, Joe Resinello.
Well, basically, here's the deal. Cuomo says he wasn't sold on the federal government's science experts' recommendation. The New York Post reported, and he had not decided if he would allow, this is what they called them, they're his subjects to enjoy normal life. And the point that Joe's basically making here is this. We're commenting on the inconsistency of the message here. This is what I mean, because to be honest with you, it's just that. I saw something today, Fauci and Rand Paul having a back and forth. And Rand Paul's basically was pressing Fauci, saying, you've been vaccinated and you wear 2 masks. It makes no sense. And then you have the CDC director saying that if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. And then you have the mayor of New York say, well, I don't buy that. Well, the CDC is the science, right? The point that we're bringing this up is all these people, I have never in my entire life seen a messaging process that is so jackass backwards. It's all over the place. And this is what Joe says, we're not dying on this hill. What we're talking about basically is this. We're not commenting on basically the science, the anti-science. The reason why we bring this up is this. You're inconsistent.
You're all over the place. You can't even, if somebody says, I believe in masks, say, point to the science. Or I don't believe in masks, or whatever. Or somebody says, well, I'm listening to Fauci on this or this one on this. The bottom line is they're all over the place. Cuomo said a few months ago, I'm following the CDC guidelines. He's a real goomba that he is. Okay. The real Don Chicha that he is. Okay. I'm following the science. I'm following the science. I'm following the CDC because he got cold busted sending COVID patients into the nursing homes, killing old people, for which he still has not been held accountable. Okay. He will be. He will be. But having said that, so a few months ago, you're following the CDC. Now you're saying that you don't follow the CDC. And Joe and I's larger point is there's so much BS that's gone on over the last 12 months. It's like, I wouldn't even know who to believe. I inherently don't trust the government. Okay. So my default position is not to believe them. Okay. But even if I didn't have that predisposition, I don't know who to believe because there's no, as Joe said, there's no consistency on any of this
exactly.
stuff.
And that's the point that why we bring this up is listen to all those things that I just laid out. There's no coherence to it.
And you know who's the least coherent? Okay. Is Dr. Fauci.
Oh, Dr. he's all over the place.
Dr. Fauci says, listen, he really don't. He does.
There's no
doubt enjoying your 15 minutes of fame. Oh. That guy is eating it up. And Rand Paul has been letting him have it hearing after hearing after hearing. And Fauci sits there.
I disagree.
Says, listen. I disagree. Paul, you know, it's not everything that you just said is not true. In the meantime, everything Rand Paul just said was true and demonstrable. And you think Rand Paul, now Rand Paul's one of the smarter guys in our government. Okay. You think Rand Paul's going to sit up there and say a lie or something that he can't prove? And you're going to sit there, Dr. Fauci, and you're going to say that you know more. He's another Don Cheech. All right. Dr. Fauci.
He's just 4'2".
Right. He's 4'2". And Cuomo's a little bit bigger than him. Okay. So you got Don Cheech and you got Don Chooch. Okay. All right. And you got the two of them. Okay. And everybody's wrong. Everybody's wrong. As soon as somebody, and I use Rand Paul as an example because Rand Paul is a doctor. And last time I checked, doctors are medical scientists. Okay. That means that they have to follow facts too, Dr. Fauci. All right. Everything everybody says is wrong except them. And Joe and I's larger argument is to say, well, I don't know who to believe.
But then here's the thing. Then they contradict themselves.
Right.
I mean, does it make sense? The argument that Rand Paul makes is very linear and logical. If you just got the shot, Dr. Fauci, you're wearing two masks.
Right.
That to me says the shot doesn't work. Right? I mean, like, am I the idiot?
Right.
So it's like, I'll be honest with you, it's insane, it's insanity, and they're all over the place.
That's right.
And here's the thing. This isn't even a political discussion.
No.
This is just observing and listening.
Here's one thing for all you people out there on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, and anybody listening to us on social media. Here's one thing for you to understand. They don't believe it. And you say, well, Joe, why are you saying that? What do you mean they don't believe it? If you listen to their words, if you go back over the last year and you listen to Fauci, you listen to Nancy Pelosi, you listen to Gavin Newsom, okay? You listen to Frontline Whitmer up there in Michigan, okay? If you listen to what they say, okay, they'll convince you that if you step 1 foot outside of your house without a mask on, okay, you're going to die, and you're going to die of COVID, okay? Now, you say, okay, that's one thing. But here's why you know they don't believe it. If they actually believed what they said, Joe Resinello, then Gavin Newsom would never have gone to a Michelin star restaurant with his 12 of his friends without a mask on. Nancy Pelosi would not have gone to a hair salon without a mask on. Dr. Fauci would not have taken his mask off at a baseball game. He got cold busted, by the way. Okay, did you remember that? He got cold busted. Okay. None of them would do any of those things if they actually believed in the BS that they were trying to convince us of. They wouldn't do it. All right. But then when we go back at them, they say, yeah, you know something, I'm a doctor and you're just stupid. That would be Fauci's response.
Well, again, no matter where you stand on the position, it's inconsistent. It's just an inconsistency. And here's the thing. If you talk about science and the scientific method, it's linear and can be proven. Their statements versus their actions are not consistent. It's obvious. And here's the thing. People are watching.
Right.
And again, I'm commenting on just a few incidents that I've just seen with my own eyes. It makes no sense. What you're saying and then what you're doing, you're contradicting. Fauci is contradicting the director of the CDC. She says you don't have to wear a mask. And Fauci takes the shots and he's wearing 2 masks. And then Cuomo says, I believe in the science and you still have to wear a mask. I don't get it.
Right. And I love, and just a finer point, and this is why one of the reasons why we love Rand Paul. Rand Paul used the words specifically. He says, well, Dr. Fauci, you go parading around with 2 masks on. And Fauci, you could see him getting hot because he's Italian, right? So he's going to get a little hot-headed, right? You could see Fauci's, like, the anger welling up in him because Rand Paul called it right. You're parading around with 2 masks on. You don't believe it. You say you've been vaccinated. Why are you wearing 2 masks? I thought we were all supposed to go back to normal once we got vaccinated. That's what we were told a few months ago. And Rand Paul puts it correctly. Why are you parading around with 2 masks? Because he wants to parade around. That's why. Because they're selling us a bill of goods.
Let's talk about what's happening in Arizona. The reason why we bring this story up, and specifically speaking, Jack Davis of the Western Journal wrote the Arizona State Senate. State Senate president reveals there's 3 serious issues with the election audit that's going on. Why are we bring this up? It's not covered in the mainstream media.
Right.
This is, you have to go to the Western Journal. And frankly, that doesn't mean that this is propaganda. This is factual. And why we bring this up is there is a date. It's next week. It's May 18th that these issues have to get resolved. But let's break this down. 5 months ago, after the Arizona State Senate issued subpoenas, for election records for Maricopa County, the state is still battling to get the facts about the election. Okay, let's break down the facts. A letter from the Senate President Karen Fain to Maricopa Board of Supervisors Chairman Jack Sellers said that the county has failed to comply with subpoenas and that the audit done to date has uncovered some trouble findings. Now, before we get into those findings, and I'm going to lay that out, this is what's going on, and this is why we bring it up, because on May 18th, they have to resolve these issues. This is an ongoing process. It's not covered in the mainstream media. My issue with this is this. Why are we doing this now? Because here's the thing. Obviously, there's fruit to this, because if it is proven that there was some issues here, it's not going to change the presidency. So please, let's not even go there.
But it'll change things moving forward.
Well, it could create some potential like improvements on election reform. And that's, again, why we bring this up. But why wasn't this done before the election? You see, my beef is this, and this is undisputable, and Clarence Thomas, who's a Supreme Court justice, has commented on, because the Supreme Court refused to take the case because John Roberts will never rock the boat. He is an institutional man. He will never rock the boat. He will never take such a case. And that is a fact. And that goes with a lot of issues that are going to rock the boat.
Let's just say he throws the conservatives a bone once in a while, but the things that really matter to us, he stabs us in the back constantly.
But as far as this, what we saw was this. We saw secretaries of state for individual states change rules that legislative bodies voted upon. That should not have happened. So that's what I'm commenting on. And this audit is checking some things. Why is this going on now? And why wasn't this done before the election? My problem with it, Clarence Thomas also has a problem with it. But let's talk about Fanning's letter citing the serious issues. Again, this is not covered in the mainstream media. You should look it up, and you should pay attention on May 18th because it has to be resolved.
Can I say one thing real quick? I want to tell you just real quick, all you guys out there in the Crusade channel, anybody watching on social media, I want to make a point to you, okay? Let's say, for argument's sake, somebody says to me, hey, what'd you think about Michael Brown getting shot, in Ferguson, Missouri, back in 2013. Now, I remember saying this then because I was asked about it. And this is my attitude towards this story, okay? I don't know. I don't know. Now, what do I mean by that? And why am I bringing that up? Because I'm not on the jury. I'm not seeing the evidence, okay? I'm not privy to it. I'm not the judge, okay? I'm not a witness. I don't know. I'm an American. So I'm not going to say that that cop is guilty of murder, and I'm not going to say he's not guilty of murder. I'm going to say all the evidence needs to be brought into court, and I believe in our court system, our judicial system, and let the courts sort it out, because that's what you do in a court of law. And that's what Joe and Joe are looking for here. I'm not saying one way or the other. What I'm saying is there's evidence that something was wrong. And I'm not saying that, oh, Trump won Arizona. Joe's not saying that either. But I'm not saying he didn't either. What I am saying is, why are you so afraid of bringing it to a court of law and providing the evidence that you're supposed to provide, and then let the court decide? That's my beef with it, Joe Resinello.
But again, they'd say that they did bring it to court.
But they didn't, because it was dismissed on standing. It had nothing to do with the merits of the case, and everybody knows. I'm sorry, Joe. I get angry. I'm angry now. I'm angry now.
That's what they basically like. My beef here is the audit should have took place. That's my point. The audit should have taken place before now, because now it's done. But let's go to the issues that were raised. Pay attention. This is important. This is what Fanning's letter said. We have recently discovered that the entire database directory from the D drive of the machine, the EMS primary, has been deleted. This removes election-related details that appear to have been covered by the subpoena.
Now, does that sound like destroying evidence to you?
In addition, the main database of the election management system, the EMS software, results tally and reporting, is not located anywhere on the EMS primary machine, even though all of the EMS clients reference that the machine has the location of the database. This suggests that the main database for all election-related data for the November 2020 general election has been removed. Again, I'm not disputing that Donald Trump should now be the president of the United States. I'm talking about this here, okay? And this is going on, and this troubles me because I'm an American. It troubles me because elections should be undisputable. She goes on. Van also said critical information about the routers used during the election has not been provided. She also said that the county has refused to provide the passwords necessary to access voter tabulation devices. She also said that the audit has uncovered appropriate omissions, inconsistencies, and anomalies relating to Maricopa County's handling, organization, and storage of ballots, and asked for explanations. This troubles me. Listen, the election is done. As Steve Bannon said, I'm not sucking my thumb. It's over.
It's over.
It's over. My point is, A, why is this going on now? Why is this going on now? It should have went on in November. That's number one. And number two, why are you fighting them on this? I'm going to tell you a story. I love your stories. I'm going to sit back. Hold on. I'm going to sit back for this one. I was backpacking in New Zealand.
You are a friggin' world. Joe Resinello, for all of those out there on the Crusade channel and all those listening on social media, Joe Resinello is a world traveler. I mean, he literally has been to the ends of the earth. Now, go ahead, Joe.
No more. Now I take the garbage.
Joe, you went backpacking through Cambodia, okay? Yeah. There's not many people who can say that. Some people would think you're a wacko leftover hippie from that. I was backpacking through Cambodia. Okay.
But I was in New Zealand, and I'm in the Southern Island taking a flight to the Northern Island to get the hell out of there to fly through back into LA. Anyway, I look like a crazy person. I have a bandana on my head, you know, backpacking through the whole deal. And the guy at customs asks me to go through my backpack. I didn't have any drugs, nothing, but I look like a lunatic. So basically, I'm a lunatic now, but I looked like more of a lunatic. Anyway, the guy asked me to go through my backpack. And I said to him straight to his face, I just said, go for it. I was like, you're just going to find dirty underwear. And I unzipped it and stepped back. He went through everything. He zipped it right back up, gave it back to me, and I got back on the line and got on the plane. Why do I tell this story? When you have nothing to hide, you don't care. And I didn't care because I didn't have drugs. I didn't have anything illicit. You want to go through my dirty underwear?
Knock yourself
Have
out.
fun. And that's exactly what I said to the guy's face. I said, all right, go for it. All I got is dirty underwear. The point is, why are you not complying with the subpoena? If you're so confident, as I was very confident. They said, oh, you want to go through my backpack? Go for it. I don't care. You're the one that has to see my dirty clothes that I've been backpacking for 3 weeks through this country. It's a beautiful country, by the way. But
this is New Zealand.
Beautiful. But my point is, really, why? That's my first question. What is the problem? What is the problem?
Does it strike you that is the question that they do not want to answer? Like when you turn around and say, why are you so opposed to this when all we want to do is find out whether there's something or there's nothing? And then guys like George Stephanopoulos, who tried to pin down Rand Paul, why won't you just admit there was no election fraud? And Rand Paul said, I don't know whether it was or there wasn't. I know that there's inconsistencies, irregularities, and I want them investigated. And I have a right to do so. This is the problem with like we got back to the beginning, the first segment that we did on the infantilism, okay, of the left. They get angry when you say, I want to see it for my damn self. I don't believe you. I don't trust you. Now, I'm willing to believe my own eyes if you show it to me. And by the way, don't show it to me because I'm not a forensic auditor, but we want a forensic auditor to go in there and we want to look at it all. We'll believe him or her, but we are not going to believe you. And this is what you get. Stomping the feet, childish George Stephanopoulos, who wouldn't leave it alone, and trying to get Rand Paul to admit to something that Rand Paul was not going to admit to. And that's what you get. May 18th is going to be a very, very interesting day. We lost. And you know, starting back in November, okay? Because Republicans and people like John Roberts allowed a lot of nonsense to happen that should have never even taken place. You should never have gotten to any of it. Like Joe always says, this problem about the election is squarely at the feet of John Roberts because he could have done something about it. Well, now we could do something about it moving forward. Okay, but we need to have all the facts. With that, we have to take a break. You're at the front line with Joe and Joe, Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello. Now we're in the breach and we're angry on top of it. On the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. And please follow Joe and I on Facebook and YouTube. Like, subscribe, share, hit the little bell, do all that fun stuff. And if you would like to support us financially, patreon.com/frontline with Joe and Joe. You can subscribe and drop in a couple bucks every month, anywhere from $5 to $5,000, whatever you want to do. Support us any way you can. Stick around. We still have more of this great conversation. We'll talk to you on the other side of the break. Welcome back to the front line with Joe and Joe, Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. And man, are we in the breach. We're way in the breach. All right, we're taking all sorts of machine gun fire from the machine gun nest, and we don't care because we're Catholic men and we're fighting against this culture. We're soldiers in this culture war. So thank you again for joining us on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. Follow Joe and I on Facebook and YouTube, Frontline with Joe and Joe or Frontline TV. And having said that, let's keep the conversation going.
Jim Hopp reported on this one. House Republicans elected, what's her name? Elise Stefanik of New York, Republican, to replace Cheney. Following the vote, Stefanik immediately trashed the radical socialists destroying the United States. Now, why do we bring this up? It's a little old news. Did I say it right? Is it Stefanik?
Stefanik.
Okay.
I do want to put a little Goomba, like one Goomba comment on it, okay? Elise Stefanik, I love that broad.
All right.
I love that broad.
I mean, I don't know too much about her.
She's got stones. Okay. Now, look, I don't know. I don't know of all her policy positions. I would assume I probably agree with her on most things. I like her because she's got stones.
But I mean, I don't know that much about her. We bring this up, and I think it's a good conversation. And I heard like different things on social media. Why did Republicans replace Liz Cheney? I heard, and I'm not going to name people who did, some very respectable people. They say things like, socially, she's on board with all the Republicans, blah, 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 blah. This is why I find this to be a good move. And this is my view. And if you disagree with me, let me know in the chat room. And also, Joe, so please chime in. Here's the deal. Liz Cheney has said that Trump is a danger to America and that he should not be allowed to run. And that's what the second impeachment was about. It was about him not being allowed to run. They had no grounds for it. And it was proven because it failed. It failed. And she basically indirectly admits that the only reason why she supported it, not because of facts, because he should not be allowed to be the president in the United States again. That disqualifies you on its merit.
Is that not an elitist position? What if the American people want Donald Trump to be president in 2024, as they obviously did in 2016? Okay? And we're not going to comment on 2020. What if the American people, Ms. Cheney, say, who the hell are you to take away a legit choice that we may or may not have for president in 2024? Who are you to say he can't? In the Constitution, Ms. Cheney, he can. And last time I checked, the Constitution overrides your stupid rhino opinion. That's why you and people like your father don't have any credibility. I like Dick Cheney. I don't respect him. Not anymore. Not since I know that he full well is a globalist elitist, just like his boss, George Bush. And I voted for these guys. I'm as ashamed of voting for them as I am for Mitt Romney in 2012. I actually thought they were on our side. I thought, Liz Cheney, that you were on our side for the longest time. But you're not, simply because of your pride and your ego. You don't like the fact that Donald Trump's not a politician. And Donald Trump is an America First Republican conservative, which you should be. But you're not. And so you voted for the second impeachment because you don't want him to run again. And our answer to you is, who the hell are you? You didn't write the Constitution. You are not the Constitution. The Constitution says he could run again. He was not found guilty by the Senate. Was not. That means he could run again. And I hope, and part of me, I don't want Donald Trump to run again, Joe Resinello. I don't.
Neither do I.
I want new blood. I want Donald Trump to be the kingmaker. I want him to throw all of his money and influence behind somebody who could really trash these Democrats, okay? But if part of me wanted him to be president again, it would be to screw people like you and all the Democrats that thought that they could smash this guy. On that level, I would say, you know what? Let him be president again. This way we could watch them all squirm just like we did on election night in 2016.
And Stefanik, the reason why I brought this up, and I want to kind of elaborate on it, she says basically as soon as she replaced Cheney, she immediately attacked the radical socialists. And this is what I would say to Miss Cheney. Why are you concerned about Donald Trump when you should be concerned that our country is being attacked and falling apart? It's falling apart by these ideas. You're concerned that Donald Trump can't be president. And basically what shows that you're unethical is there are no legitimate reasons to impeach him, because if they were, he would have been impeached. You tried twice. And basically, I always say this, from the first impeachment, a liberal was the reason why he didn't get impeached. And that was Alan Dershowitz, who is a self-professed Democrat and a liberal. It was because of his testimony. It was the only thing you have to listen to. Factual, constitutional, historic, brilliant. And that's why, if you ask me, he was not impeached, and he's a liberal.
Right.
I give him at least credit and respect, because at least he has some principles when it comes to the Constitution. And he spoke the truth, and he wasn't impeached. Well, Liz, he shouldn't have even had a trial because he wasn't even the president when the impeachment took place. It was bullcrap. And why are you not attacking these ideas that are being shoved down the throat of the average American on Main Street?
Right.
You're more concerned about Donald Trump? Get with the program.
Right.
Get with the program.
I like to tell Liz Cheney, you think these radical socialists are going to spare you, Miss Cheney? Do you? Do you think when the guillotines start flying, if it gets to that point, you think your head's not going to be in it? We know, Joe and I, we already know we're going to our maker. That's why we stay close to confession and we stay close to Christ. We know what they're going to do with us. You think you're going to be spared because you said some bad things about Donald Trump, or you supported his impeachment, or his not being able to run again? You think you're going to be spared because you talk like a rhino and you talk in conciliatory terms with the left? These are criminals, Miss Cheney. You're supposed to be the smart one. Socialism, communism, that's all it is a criminal enterprise. Get it through your head. Why are you doing nicey nice with them? But Elise Stefanik is not. And MTG is not. That's why Pelosi wants to silence MTG. She's just a regular woman. The people in Georgia said, you know what? Get in there, Marjorie. Get it. Same with Elise Stefanik. Get in there. These women have stones, okay? That's why Pelosi hates them, because they're a threat to her, okay? And that's why you hate them, Miss Cheney, because you just want to do business. That's all you want to do. You just want to do your establishment rhino business with these animals on the left. And they're animals and children. That's what they are. So why do you think we don't like you, Miss Cheney? Why do you think we're happy that Elise Stefanik is now sitting in the place that you were sitting in? Because you're feckless. You're feckless. That's what you are.
And here's another thing. They're at war with you. You see, this is what the Republicans don't get. Frankly, this is what the Catholic Church doesn't get. They're at war with you. This is not normal politics. This is slash and burn. They're looking to, they want to pack the court. They want to federalize the election system. They want to make DC a state. They want to make Puerto Rico a state to consolidate power. They open up the borders. Why? Because they want illegals to vote and turn Texas blue. Listen, they're at war with you. And Cheney, you got to stand up and fight. Forget about the orange man. How about we fight to save the country? By the way, there's a lot of Democrats that are not on board with this. That's why they've passed nothing, by the way. They have power. They have the House, and supposedly with Ms. Harris, they have the Senate. If it's a tie vote, they still can't pass anything, because normal Democrats that I may disagree with on many things, but people who are at least somewhat sane, are not on board.
Well, Manchin, we mentioned Joe Manchin. Joe Manchin is the most powerful man in the United States government right now.
That's why Biden just met with him.
Right. And tell the audience, what did he do?
He left the meeting and there was a press conference. He said, I forget the other point, but it was particularly on federalizing the elections. He's like, I'm not doing it. He was like, absolutely, emphatically not. So here's the deal.
Oh, by the way, and Republicans, liberal Republicans, are safe on that. Like a Susan Collins, okay, or even a Mitt Romney. That's just, see, it's not like abortion. That's unsafe for the Susan Collinses of the world, okay? Nationalizing the election, Susan Collins is totally safe on that. So is Romney, so are the other rhinos, okay? They will not vote for that. I would predict if they did, I'd be shocked. Mitch McConnell, again, that's a safe issue for him. DC statehood, that's a safe issue. You keep the Republicans in line on those issues, which I believe is something that they probably will be able to do, okay, then Joe Manchin becomes is the most powerful man in the government, because they need him. And by the way, another person, okay, I even think she's a bisexual, so not that means much, but I probably don't agree with her much on anything. Kristen Sinema seems to have on these issues her head on straight too. She's not for this either. So you got two people that are not going for this. And again, the children are stomping their feet. And believe me, if they had their way, they'd take Manchin out. But they know if they can't get Manchin out, because the people in West Virginia, they would just replace him with a conservative Republican. You know what I mean? So he's the most powerful guy right now. So they're not going to be able to get this through. They're not. And thank God. Thank God they're not.
Let's talk. This is kind of like a sister story to that. David Limbaugh of JP Media brings this one. He says, the GOP seek not phony bipartisanship, save the nation. And this is along what I was just basically saying about Cheney. She should be fighting this agenda, forgetting about Donald Trump. This is what he has to say. He says, indeed, what's the point in the GOP puffing out its chest and about ousting Liz Cheney from her House leadership position if they're just going to turn around and behave like never Trumpers by caving on Biden's agenda? Why should they play footsie? This is the important part. With the most militantly leftist party in American history. They mustn't appease the cancel culture mob. And this is what the Republicans don't get. This is what the church doesn't get. They hate you. Do you get it? They hate you. It's not about like, listen, we disagree with you. They want to grind you into dust. And if you don't stand up and fight, you will be ground into dust.
Right.
Do you get it? People, I'm going to be honest with you. I see sometimes some people who try to take sometimes on certain things central roles. Listen, I don't even consider myself a Republican, actually, to be honest with you. I'm a Catholic, and I vote according to my Catholic belief system.
Which lines up naturally with a more conservative
Correct.
political
But
alignment.
there's many things that I'll have a conversation with a Democrat on.
Mm-hmm.
We could have conversations on immigration. We could have conversations on the economy. We may not agree, but we could have a conversation. But that's a conversation for another day. My point is, this leftist regime, and that's just what it is, wants to destroy you.
And their foot soldiers.
Why would you possibly want to say, like, go along with it? Sorry.
I'm reminded of the line. I think I might have brought it up once before, and I'll paraphrase it because I don't know the exact quote, but I'm reminded of the line from Terminator, where Reese, Michael Bihn's character, is trying to tell Sarah Connor about this thing that she's been running from. And he says, it's out there, okay? It can't be reasoned with. It can't be bargained with. It has no pity, no remorse, and it will not stop until you are dead. Sounds an awful lot like the left to me. You cannot reason with them because you're a hater, you're a bigot, you're a racist. You hate gay people, you hate women. So they don't want to reason with you. They don't want to actually have an argument or a debate over policy, prescriptions, and ideas. They can't be bargained with for the same reason, okay? They have no pity. They'll take your kids right out of your house to teach you a lesson about being too traditional or too Christian or too orthodox, okay? So they have no pity. They have no remorse. We know that because they killed 100 million people in the 20th century, and they still apologize for it on college campuses. So we know they have no remorse, and they won't stop until we're all dead. And by dead, meaning maybe not literally, politically, no power whatsoever. That's why they want D.C., and that's why they want Puerto Rico to be states. That's why they want a 7-6 majority on the Supreme Court. That's why they want to federalize the election, because they want us politically at least dead.
And if you disagree with what we're talking about, let's break this down, why this regime is a disaster, okay? What I want to talk about is the poisonous fruit of Biden's programs, okay? Inflation, an overrun border that threatens American sovereignty and security, a constant stirring of racial resentment.
Oh, that's cool.
Foreign policy weaknesses, gas hikes partially caused by a war on domestic energy, a war on the police, a war on free, fair, and honest elections, a perversion of our national security by preposterously identifying white supremacy as the greatest security threat out there.
As though we don't have eyes to see that the greatest security threat out there is BLM and Antifa. But go ahead.
A weakened military obsessed with identity politics, a never-ending climate of fear over the pandemic that keeps school and businesses shut down, rampant cancel culture, and academic, cultural, and digital institutions that suppress speech, demanding conformity and smothering academic inquiry.
He's spot on, brother.
That's objective, if you ask me. That's the fruit of this crap. And this is why Cheney should be all on fighting. There, as my good friend Terry, on Terry and Jesse out in California, great radio show on Virgin Most Powerful, you should check it out. He'd say, you're watering the corn while the house is on fire. I love that analogy.
Right.
That's what you're doing.
Right.
You're worrying about the corn. The house is on fire. This is a militant, leftist, And here's the thing. That's why Joe Biden is needed for these people. He says, oh, I'm for unity, I'm for unity. And then they do something else. And all those things I just read, that's just the beginning.
Oh, yeah. That's just happening now. We don't even know what atrocities are coming in the near future. Okay. And Joe Biden, by the way, this idea of him being unifying, he's not unifying anything. That's again, that leftist infantile projection onto Donald Trump. Trump's so divisive. Joe Biden, forget about what he says. Look at what he does. See, what Donald Trump said, they called divisive, yet everything Donald Trump did was unifying. So if you look at black unemployment being at historic lows, criminal justice reform, where he was reaching out to these kids who are in jail and need another shot. All right. In other words, criminal justice reform. He was trying to be unifying in his policies. Okay. So they used what he said as being divisive because he said we need to secure the border. He blamed China for the virus, which he should have because it's a fact. Okay. With Biden doesn't speak in divisive terms, or at least they'll say that. Okay. Everything that Biden does is divisive. Everything is meant to pit people against each other. You look all the proposed legislation, Joe Resino, the Equality Act, that's meant to divide us. That's not meant to protect the rights of gay people or lesbian people. That bill is meant to divide us, is what it is. That bill foments hatred between, let's say, traditional people and people who are gay and lesbian, let's say, because you're putting people at odds with one another. And that's just one example. There's so many examples, okay? Joe Biden is the most, and the people that are running his regime is the most divisive man to ever sit in there. And they blame Donald Trump for being divisive. And it's just not demonstrably true, Joe. It's not. And we get tired of it. And that's why we're here at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello, way in the breach on the Crusade channel. Always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. Please make sure you follow Joe and I on Facebook and YouTube. Like, subscribe, share, do all of that fun stuff. We'll probably be coming up to a break on about a minute. So let's go for another minute, Joe, and start another conversation.
Well, Sam Brownback, he's the former governor of Kansas, and also he's the former senator of that state as well. This is what he wrote. He said, this is the most persecuted era of Christianity in the history of mankind. So let's break it down a little bit. And basically what he did was he commented on a report that the State Department put out. This is what he said. The report really documents China's war on all faiths, its communist regime. The communists are atheists. They have trouble with any sort of allegiance to a higher moral authority, to God. They're going at it, hammer and tongs, on everybody, whether it's the Tibetan Buddhists, the house church Christians, the underground Catholic Church, the Falun Gong, or the
Uyghurs. Let's leave it there for a second. We're going to take a break. Stick around. We're going to pick up on this conversation. We got one segment left. Don't go anywhere. Stay with the front line with Joe and Joe. We'll talk to you on the other side of the break. Welcome back, everyone, to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello, and Sam Brownback is spot on. I'm going to hand it back to Joe Resinello. This is the most persecuted era in the history of Christianity.
And here's the thing that I find to be interesting about this. Now, this group of people who are in power right now say that they're tolerant, particularly even of the Muslim people. The Chinese are outright running amok on religious liberty for all people, not just Christians, because they hate us, on Muslims, on free speech, on everything, and they don't say boo. In fact, you hear these groups, these woke capitalists, like at Apple, like at Google, like at the NBA.
I was going to say the NBA.
Because they make millions of dollars in China. This is another we talked about like a nonlinear idea when we were talking about this is science with the mask, this isn't science with the mask, blah, 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 blah. All the connected conversations that are going on with Fauci, what's going on with Cuomo, what's going on with the head of the CDC. Well, here's another nonlinear idea that's completely disconnected. You have a group of people in China that are outwardly persecuting Muslims. and you will do business with them and could care less. You could care less. And I find it to be honest with you, again, if you're an objective person, forget about political hats. You listen to some of this stuff and you just say to yourself, how can I buy your bullcrap?
Well,
and here's the point.
Go ahead.
Why are we giving them any money?
Right. Well, that's always the underlying thing. We give them power by giving them our money. But here's the thing. We're always talking. We're always got to hear about the oppressed masses. Everybody's freaking oppressed. The greatest oppressor in the world right now is the Chinese Communist government. Joe just laid it out. Now, we as Catholics, obviously, we sympathize with the underground Catholic Church. Cardinal Zen goes on and on about
they can care less about Catholics, but even the Muslims. That's
3 million Uyghurs.
That's why I give that.
3 million Uyghurs that are enslaved by the Chinese Communist Party. These are men and women living in cages. They're Muslims, okay? Chinese Muslims. 3 million. Aren't they the oppressed masses? But Apple, Tim Cook is going to try to justify that somehow. I'm going to go out and buy an iPhone. No, knowing that Coca-Cola, okay? I was so thirsty yesterday. My wife and I had gone to the outlets, right? Because I wanted to buy her some. Our anniversary is coming up, okay? And there was a machine there. And it had Coke on it, and I was like, I can't do it. I can't do it. Now I'd be the first to. I don't drink much soda to begin with. All right. Instead, I got a bottle of water or whatever the case may be. My point is, notice all these companies are doing business in China. They're all woke in America. They're talking about how bad America is, but they're doing business in China, and China is the greatest oppressor in the world. The Chinese Communist Party. How you talk about linear? How is it that if we make this argument at the Frontline with Joe and Joe on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, if we make this argument, we're the stupid people. All we're doing is looking at the facts. Objectively looking at the facts. Coca-Cola, you are a woke American corporation. You do business in China. Same with Apple. Same with all of them.
Same with the banks.
Same with the banks. You're doing business with China. And then you're going to talk to us because we don't accept gay marriage. I'm an oppressor because I don't believe in gay marriage, but you're going to do business with a regime that literally has their boot on the face of Catholics and Falun Gong and the Uyghurs and anybody they could smash their boot. Anybody's face who they could smash their boot on, they do it. Okay. And you do business with them. And you call us names, you call us white supremacists, whatever that means. Okay. You call us extremists because we don't believe in gay marriage or we're pro-life. And we got to take that from you. And again, like Joe said, I blame us because we put money in their pockets. The only reason they have power is because we, that includes all you guys out there and us, we put money in their pockets.
And also, just so you know, I did hear this week. The NBA is down again in profits.
I'm so happy about that.
See, that's how we fight them. I'm telling you. That is how we fight them. You want to change this narrative, they'll change in a heartbeat because they're not principled. They're not principled. We covered this story on one of our other shows regarding Ted Cruz writing an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, basically saying how these corporate, big shots are jumping on the bandwagon because it's in their interest to do so now. Take their money away, they'll change their tune in a heartbeat.
That's right.
And I'm waiting for the NBA, the shoe to drop, because what they're going to eventually come to is this. You see, I've learned this just in my own business experience. You're never bigger than the brand. No matter how big you are, when you're part of a big organization that has a big name, like say Coca-Cola or the NBA, you may make them a lot of money. And there's a lot of rainmakers in big companies like LeBron James. But ultimately, LeBron, you're not bigger than the brand. And if what you're selling doesn't make the brand money, i.e., or takes the brand down, they'll turn on you faster than you could blink an eye. That is straight up and down the truth. And that is the language that CEOs speak, whether it's the NBA, banks, advertising, publishing, Coca-Cola, Apple, computers, big tech, you name it. And Americans have to figure that out. They don't, because we're weak. We're weak. We want this. We want this. You know something? You want to change things? You got to sacrifice a little bit. Stop buying Starbucks. Don't go to the NBA games. Stop watching the NFL. Stop going to Disneyland. Stop watching Hollywood movies and the dial will change faster than you could blink an eye. Faster than you could blink an eye, because they have no principle. Their principle is money.
Why are we not, when it comes to all the woke corporations, it's one thing to say, well, we see how they're treating us. So Georgia passes some reasonable election reforms. Okay, they do away with absentee ballots, which really cheesed off the left because that's, they really want that. And we know the reasons why they want that. Okay. And these big corporations, they got problems with it. You're disenfranchising people and blah, which is all a lie. Okay. They come after us. And nobody in this country steps up. I mean, on a larger scale. All right. Joe and I are very humble guys. We know the scale we're on right now. Hopefully that's going to be a much higher level as we move along, and it will be, God willing. Okay. And we'll keep saying the same things. Why isn't this being hammered all over the place? These corporations are doing business with a regime that's really no different in its essence than when Mao was in power. No different. The only difference is they use corporations. You have state-sponsored capitalism, which is not really capitalism, okay? You have businesses, but they're all in bed with the government. But as far as human rights is concerned, all human rights, not just religious rights, all human rights is concerned, all right? They're trampling these people underfoot. And these wokesters in America, we let them get away with not saying anything about it. That's my problem. How is America? And Trump was one of the only ones that actually said it. And because he said it, and those people are Chinese, that made Trump racist. They're killing people and enslaving people and oppressing people. And Trump points it out, and Trump's the racist. You tell me that we're not living in a bizarro world, Joe Resinello?
It is. It's insane. And like I said, all you have to do sometimes is step back. And I'm not even speaking as a Republican. No. I'm just speaking as an observer. It's an observer's position. And frankly, it's, to be honest with you, that's why I can't take them serious.
Right.
If you're going to be so woke, you should be speaking out against the Chinese government, and you should refuse to do business with them because of what they do to the Muslim minority in their country.
Right.
And you're not.
Right. Is Linda Sarsour, again, maybe I'm wrong. If I am, you could correct me. Okay. Is Linda Sarsour out there, Miss Radical Lefty Muslim that she is, complaining about the treatment of the Uyghurs in China? No, she's always complaining about something going on in America, but she's got nothing to say about China. Little Miss Sarsour with a big mouth, okay, because that's what she has, a big. I don't begrudge her that because we have big mouths, okay, but we're not annoying. She's annoying, okay, but she's not saying anything. All these people that complain about Muslim oppression in the Middle East, and they complain about the Jews in Israel and this and that, but you're not saying anything about China now, are you? Are you? Not saying anything about Xi Jinping, are you? The hypocrisy, Joe, is blinding. It's blinding, and it needs to be called out. You're at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello. We got a few minutes left. Stick with us till the end of the show. We're on the Crusade Channel, always on air, always online, at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Joe Resinello, where are we headed?
We're going Bill Donahue in the Catholic League.
Love that guy.
He wrote a couple of interesting articles. This first one we got here is Beware the Anti-Racism Agenda. And we're going to break it down. This is what he had to say, Mr. Donahue. We interviewed him too, by the way, on Veritas Catholic Network. If you go onto their website and look at our show, you could hear a very, very good conversation that we had with Bill on the Equality Act. No holds barred, phenomenal conversation. You should check it out.
That was a barn burner, I got to say.
So this is what Bill had to say. He said, the Catholic Church regards racism to be an intrinsic evil and supports policies to check it. It must be noted, however, that today there is no shortage of educators, reporters, activists, and lawmakers who claim to oppose racism while harboring an agenda that sometimes promotes it. They do so mostly for ideological reasons, spot on. Though those in the diversity and grievance industry, I love that phrase, also profit from it monetarily. Critical race theory, which is an inherent racist prescription. It judges people on the basis of their skin color, not their individual traits, is a textbook example of promoting racism in the name of fighting it. He's 100% right. And you know something? If Martin Luther King was alive today, he would not support this method of fighting racism. Because let's be honest, there is racist people and racist organizations in America, one of which is the school system, because that is the biggest example of systematic racism in America, that black single women cannot send their kids to charter schools in the inner city and have to send their kids to horrible schools that graduate 3 out of 10 people because the teachers union won't budge an inch. You want to talk about systematic racism? That's the greatest example.
Sounds like racism to me.
Now, Martin Luther King very clearly stated that a man should be judged not by the color of his skin, by the content of his character. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. And I will fight against any type of racist agenda.
Right.
No matter if the person is Catholic, white, black, Hispanic, Asian, not about it.
And here's another thing too. We know that they want political power, but Joe brought up something that Donahue said. It's also about money. So the new way I'm describing, I don't like Ibram Kendi. I think he should be shouted down. I think he should be discredited. I don't think he should be teaching anywhere. And if CNN or the regime media wants to put him on, then shame on them. Critical race theory is a lie. And on top of it being a lie, it's racist. Okay? Because as Donahue said, and as Joe alluded to, it judges people primarily on the color of their skin. But why don't we call it the way it is about Ibram Kendi? He's Al Sharpton with a degree. He's making money.
A lot of it.
We covered what's her name from BLM. She's making money.
She just bought a $1.4 million home in Malibu.
In Malibu.
This is about her 4th house.
This is Patrice Cullors. Okay, don't call her colors because they'll call you racist. So I'm going to call her Cullors. All right, Patrice Cullors. She's gotten rich by promoting racism. She promotes racism. She promotes the hatred of white people who have white skin. That's what she does, just like Ibram Kendi does. They get the woke corporations to buy into it. That's why we need to boycott these corporations that would even think about getting their employees into a back room, showing them a video about just how much they're supposed to hate themselves because of a natural trait, like the color of the skin.
White.
And you have to be less white.
We covered that story a while ago. That's what Coca-Cola showed their employees.
Right.
You have to be less.
You have to be less white. What does that mean? See, I'm Italian. Joe's Italian. If you want to tell me, be less Goomba, but that's got nothing to do with race. That's to do with I'm a Goomba. But I'm not going to be less Goomba because that's the way I am. I talk the way I do. Okay. I have an accent from Newark, New Jersey. I walk the way I walk, and that's the way I am. I feel no need to change because there's nothing wrong with the way I present myself to the public. I don't need to be less Goomba because in my heart, what I am, and this is our identity, and they really hate this part. Okay. We are Catholics. And everything that means, as Donahue pointed out, racism is an intrinsic evil. Joe Rossinello, remind people of what an intrinsic evil is.
An intrinsic evil is wrong no matter what, under all circumstances, like slavery. It's an intrinsic evil. Like abortion. It's an intrinsic evil. Like cloning. It's an intrinsic evil. No matter where it's done, no matter who's doing it, no matter what. No matter what party's doing it, whether it's a Republican or whether it's a Democrat, it's intrinsically, inherently wrong, and you cannot support it. It's a disqualifier,
right?
Is the way I like to
and if you're a Christian, particularly if you're a Catholic, and you harbor any sort of ideas of racial superiority, you need to go to spiritual direction, and you need to talk to your priest because you have what is an intrinsically evil position, because that is a racist position. When you believe that your race is superior to another's based on just, let's say, for example, natural characteristics like skin color. Okay, but this is not what Ibram Kendi and the rest of these people are about, and this is what Donahue was pointing out. Okay, let's talk. Like, see, this is why they don't like people like Bill Donahue. Well, he'll end up in the guillotine also, by the way. Okay, if they had their way, as along with Joe and I. Donahue's a sociologist by trade. That's what he is. He used to be a school teacher. He's got a PhD in sociology. He throws out some statistics. Now, the Southern Poverty Law Center is another criminal enterprise that needs to be discredited in every way. They're another race huckster, anti-Semitism huckster, pointing out fingers of all these groups that they can consider hate groups, like they consider the Catholic Church a hate group because of the church's teaching on homosexuality and marriage in particular. Okay, they need to be discredited, but they're not a legit organization. The Southern Poverty Law Center did say that it was unnerved to learn that the majority of Americans thought that Black Lives Matter violence in 2020 was a bigger problem than police violence against blacks. So they were unnerved, Joe Resinello, to learn this. But here's Donahue, okay, with good reason. BLM killed 25 people, assaulted the police, burned down entire neighborhoods, and engaged in widespread looting. I think anybody with a head, a brain cell, knows that everything that Donahue pointed out is a fact. In 2019, he points out, police shot and killed 999 people. 452 were white, 252 were black, 26 of the whites and 12 of the blacks were unarmed. So why wouldn't I think that BLM and Antifa are more of a problem than the police? Why wouldn't I think that? Just based on the information, Joe Resinello.
I mean, the press will tell you, and many people have said it, that Antifa doesn't exist. Tell that to Andy Nago, who's basically had to leave the country because of death threats that a bookie wrote, and he got hit in the head with a battery in the streets of Portland.
They detached a part of his brain during the beating. Like, he went to the hospital, and the connective tissue in the brain that connects the brain to the skull got detached. Tell him, Jerry Nadler. That guy, I don't like that guy. Tell him, Jerry Nadler. Oh, Antifa's a myth with that New York condescension. All right. He said Antifa's a myth. Yeah. Tell that to homosexual Andy Nago, whose back you didn't take because he's conservative.
Well, Donahue wasn't done, and we want to just cover one more thing that he had to say.
We've got a few minutes left.
He basically said in this other article, the meaning of linguistic politics. He said this: the left has always been convinced that they have some Gnostic calling, often manifested in utopian ideas to change society. That is why they have no ethical problem imposing their beliefs on society. Imposing is a great word. What drives them is an insatiable appetite for power. They want to control the way we think and act. Now, here's the thing. As a Catholic man, I don't impose my ideas on anyone. I propose. And when it comes to abortion, listen, you have every right to save a life and a child. I'm not taking away anything. I'm actually saving the life of a child. I'm actually helping women by being pro-life. But he's spot on. He goes on to say this. I just bring that up because they'd say I'm imposing my way on you. No, I'm not. Law basically sets up boundaries. You can't kill. And abortion is taking the life of a child, and it wounds women. He goes on. The meaning of linguistic politics is thought control. Its purpose is to get people to adopt a new mindset, one that mirrors the politics of elites. The consequences are far-reaching. Those who control our words control our thoughts, and our thoughts influence our behavior. They know what they are doing. I'll say that again. They know what they are doing. Today's brand of journalists and educators are masterful practitioners of thought control. They are convinced that it's their job to have us talk the talk, i.e., their talk.
Right.
Bill's spot on.
That's what it's all about. And this is what the left does. And we, again, have historical examples of it. Okay. You had, when Hollywood used to be good. Okay. You had Hollywood examples of it in the movie I always allude to with Dr. Zhivago, where the Bolshevik looks at Zhivago and says, adapt yourself. Because Zhivago's saying things that the Bolshevik doesn't want to hear. All right, asking annoying questions, okay, and confronting the Bolshevik. And his only response, and this is what Donahue's getting to: adapt yourself. What is one of the main ways they make you adapt yourself? Controlling the words that you could use. Controlling the words that you could use. So if a man thinks he's a woman, and I call him, because that's by calling him is not detached from reality. calling him her, okay, is detached from reality. They want to control my words, therefore control my behavior. So I'm not adapting myself because I'm referring to a man as a man. By the way, as an aside, I was on the phone with a friend of mine the other day, and I'm very shocked. We're in the conversation. He's a down to earth guy. I love him to death, right? Down to earth guy. And he was referring to Bruce Jenner as Caitlyn Jenner. And okay, if you want to refer to Bruce Jenner as Caitlyn Jenner because that's what Bruce wants to be called, that's one thing. That's a name. But he kept referring to him as her.
I call him Caitlyn the Bruce.
Caitlyn the Bruce. You remember like Robert the Bruce from Braveheart? He's Caitlyn the Bruce. But my thing is this, like he was even a reasonable, normal, level-headed guy. He's calling Bruce Jenner her. It's not a her. It's not a her. It's a him. But the thing is, but this is what these guys do. They control our thoughts. No reasonable person should be calling Caitlyn Jenner a her. Because Caitlyn Jenner, Bruce Jenner, is a he. But you gotta control what people say. You can't call people homeless anymore. There are people without homes. Well, what the F is the difference? It's a homeless person or a person without a home. You can't call an illegal alien a illegal alien. You have to call them something, but you can't call them that. Okay?
I call them Stunad. That's what I call them, dude. They're completely crazy.
Right. And these people are way off the deep end, and they're obviously off the deep end, and we'll finish up with this, harkening back to the first segment. Theirs is a pathology that we broke down for you, okay, where you could see all their symptoms from intolerance to rage to everybody's a victim. Blame everything else for what happened in your life and the decisions you made. Blame racism. Blame the patriarchy. Blame the Catholic Church. Blame, because that's all children could do, okay? And that's all people who have this pathology can do because they're not rooted in truth. And as Joe said, what they really need more than anything else is not a political awakening. They need a spiritual awakening. We should pray for them, okay, because they are lost. And unfortunately, we're out of time, and we have to leave it there. We want to thank you all for joining us at the Frontline with Joe and Joe on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. Please remember to follow Joe and I across social media, wherever you find us. Hit a bell, hit a like, hit a share, hit a subscribe. Do something to help us out. And if you want to drop a couple bucks in to help us out and subscribe, we are on Patreon at patreon.com/the Frontline with Joe and Joe. So this was a great conversation. And remember, until the next time, that our conversation is your conversation. And that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you next week.